Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, September 5th, and that means that football is officially here. Our kickoff is in just over 3 hours. The two-time defending Super Bowl champions will take on the Baltimore Ravens in a rematch of the AFC Championship game from last year to start off their title defense and the quest for the first ever three-peat in the Super Bowl era. The Kansas City Chiefs kick off tonight at 8:20. I cannot wait for that. We will be delving into that game, diving into all of the details, who I think is going to win, a little bit of preview or both sides as we get ready to kick off the first game of the NFL season, as well as taking a look at a couple of the lingering storylines from around other teams in the NFL. Two major holdouts, Jamar Chase and Haason Reddick, giving you updates on where both of those two players stand, as well as a couple of contracts that we missed, including one in baseball and one in the NFL. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature to do the exact same thing. If you do either of those two things, again, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world of sports to see. If you have a burning question, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on this Thursday kickoff of the 2024 football season. But like I was saying, we are going to break down that very first game to start off our show today. The Ravens head into the Fountain City, Kansas City, to take on the two-time defending Super Bowl champions and Patrick Mahomes. This game is the first opening game in the history of the NFL to feature two-time MVPs. Lamar Jackson, obviously the reigning MVP from last season, winning his second after an incredible performance all year long, taking the Ravens to the best record in the regular season and a spot in the AFC Championship game before falling to these Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes as they were en route to their second straight Super Bowl victory. Tonight should be a lot of fun. Both of these teams have made some changes, although these two teams are very similar. The storyline from that one-possession, 7-point AFC Championship games that we saw the Ravens lose was missed opportunities and the lack of a run game. Zay Flowers fumbles on the goal line. That would have tied the game. The Ravens run the ball 11 times total, 3 times in the second half. For a team in the Ravens who are built around the run, and going up against a team in the Chiefs who were 18th in the league against the run last season, that spelled disaster. They end up falling by 7 points to those Kansas City Chiefs, and now on their mind is revenge. They head into Kansas City today. It's a spread of +3 for the Ravens, -3 for the Chiefs. They are favored if you're into some gambling there. It's going to be a really good game. The Ravens' big addition this offseason was Derrick Henry. And when we broke down all 32 teams, obviously Derrick Henry was the headline for the Ravens and what we look for as they change heading into this season. They also lost defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald, who ends up as the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. The Ravens are in a good spot, though. They still have an elite defense. Justin Madubuike coming in off of getting a huge contract off of a career year as that interior guy to stop the run against the Chiefs. They draft Nate Wiggins, who, if you were watching yesterday, is a guy that I think could win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I love what the Ravens have done this offseason. I expect them in this game to run the ball. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses over there for the Ravens. The one big weakness for them as they head into this game especially is their offensive line. They are just returning 2 of their 5 starters from last year on an offensive line that was pretty good. Now, they've made a bunch of replacements, but they're young guys. We don't know how they're going to respond against especially one of the elite pass rushers in this league in Chris Jones. Chris Jones is going to cause problems, but that's where being able to run these run pass options over him with Derrick Henry, a guy that if there's anyone that can handle some pressure from Chris Jones and a running back, it's going to be Derrick Henry. His just physicality and size and his ability to avoid tackles. There's a reason he is King Henry in this league. And I think that's really what this game is going to come down to. The Chiefs are going to get their points. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, we've highlighted a lot of the Ravens' improvements, but the Chiefs offensively, especially in that wide receiver room, have made many improvements. They still have Rashee Rice, who it doesn't seem like is going to get suspended this year for all the stuff that happened this offseason. They bring in Hollywood Brown. He's not going to play this week, but he should be back soon. Juju Smith-Schuster returns. They draft Xavier Worthy, who just ran the fastest 40 time in the history of the NFL. This is a much more formidable offense weapon-wise. Add that to Travis Kelce. You still have Isaiah Pacheco. The Chiefs are going to score points because they have Patrick Mahomes. That offense only continues to get better. Where they did lose a little bit was on defense. Now, that front seven is still really good. We talked about Chris Jones. He got himself a nice little contract from the Chiefs. He is going to be the centerpiece, and he's arguably the best defender in football right now. But he is over the age of 30. He's past his prime a little bit. I don't know how long he can keep up this dominating stretch for. The bigger loss, I believe, is L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed gets traded to the Titans, and L'Jarius Sneed is one of these guys in football that he was just one of the best cover corners. His physicality, especially, was huge down the stretch in the playoffs, being able to stop these weapons. Now, the Ravens also got better weapons. Alongside Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, they bring in, of course, Derrick Henry. But Mark Andrews is back. They used a lot of Isaiah Likely last season. This is the kind of team this is the best weapon core Chiefs, the Ravens taking on the Chiefs tonight as the NFL officially kicks off in just over 3 hours from now. I have the Ravens winning that game in a We're going to talk a little bit about some of the holdouts, including the Jets with Haason Reddick and the with Jamar Chase. In just a second, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. Football kickoff is tonight. But like I was the NFL offseason right now to this point. The Jets trade for him from the Eagles for a third round pick. Everything seems fine and dandy. The original trade because he wants a long-term contract, which is exactly why he wanted out of the Eagles. The Eagles were unwilling to pay that, so they trade him to the Jets. Now, but it seems like they have reached an impasse. Haason Reddick has yet to report to camp. The season for the Jets kicks off on Monday, so they do have about an extra day left until they officially important part of that pass rush for the New York Jets. A Jets defense that is probably their weakest point, although to call the pass right, the New York Jets, their defense is going to be elite at all three levels. The secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line, with or without Haason Reddick, is going to be very long this is going to last. We know that both sides seem to have their heels dug in up to this point, with Haason Reddick, of course, not showing up to camp yet, despite going through all of these fines. And, of course, Joe Douglas releasing a statement saying, we're not going to trade him. We expect a battle of attrition. And honestly, I would not be shocked if Haason Reddick does not of this NFL season. He seems like that kind of guy that he has been one of the most successful players in the league if you just go by sack numbers, right? If you just go by sack numbers, Haason Reddick has been one of the most prolific players in the last 4 seasons, getting 50 sacks in the top 5 with some of the best pass rushers in the current NFL. In that pool of talent, right? There's a separation between Haason Reddick and those top couple of guys that I just mentioned. It's and the and Haason Reddick and his camp, because obviously these two sides are dug in enough, but the Jets aren't going to pay him until you know he goes and plays some snaps for them, just proves that he's willing to play, get out there on the field. It feels like nothing has gotten, but they're also not going to trade him. I'm not trading for Haason Reddick right now. A, because the Jets are going to want at least their investment back, which was a third round pick, and B, because why would I want a guy that has a trade request, gets traded, no longer is on the Now, I'm sure they were trying to work something out, but just because something isn't worked out, he hasn't really even shown up at all for this new team. And that is a problem in the locker room, outside of the locker room. Haason Reddick is going to be in. And that might be kind of crazy. But with that defense, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, I mean, we saw what they did last season with Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson. They only got better weapons wise. Haason Reddick could be a thorn in their side, but this is a team I legit think could be a sleeper to make the Super Bowl this year out of the AFC. And I think if there's a team that's ready and built to beat the Kansas City Chiefs this year, it is them because of their defense that we know Aaron Rodgers can be, that he has been winning 2 MVPs in his last. A lot more time to figure this out, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Haason Reddick is going to play at all this season? I'm more on the side that I don't think he's going to, and the Jets are just going to have to eat a third-round pick, which is poor management by them. We've talked a lot about this in the past, but it's just kind of crazy to me that you trade for a guy you know he wants a contract, and regardless of how dug in you are with your stance, if he's not going to play, just give him like a 1 year extension or something. I'm sure that's not what he wants. I'm sure he wants a long-term deal. You have to agree with it. So it's a little bit on both sides, but I think it's just bad management. And I do think Haason Reddick is one of those guys that would sit out for an entire season. So that situation has seemed to get sour. We might not see Haason Reddick until next. We're going to talk all about the other NFL holdout that has been going on, the Ja'Marr Chase situation. Ja'Marr Chase is an interesting one, not just for football, NFL football, but also for figure out if they should play him this week. We'll talk about all the updates that are around Ja'Marr Chase, where he sits, if he's going to be Bengals taking on the New England Patriots. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports Z Podcast Network.
GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over a messy situation for both Joe Douglas and the Jets and the Haason Reddick team, one that doesn't seem like it's going to have a very nice conclusion. In this segment, we're going to go over the other major NFL holdout that's going on right now in Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is in a very similar situation. He's trying to get his money in the midst of a wide receiver market explosion. Interesting to see where it's heading right now. We're going to take a quick look at everything that's going on with that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much. Are going to get into the second part of our holdout talk today, talking about Ja'Marr Chase. And that's been the last one. We talked a lot about the 49ers while that situation was going on, but there's really only one situation left. And that is Ja'Marr Chase. One more fantasy relevant situation that has been a bit of an issue. Ja'Marr Chase is looking to also get paid. The wide receiver market has exploded. It's up almost $15 million from where it was at the end of last season with the likes of CeeDee Lamb, Ja'Marr Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, and many more looking to be the next guy to get signed. While he is not so patiently waiting, it seems like the Bengals are doing everything they can to do it. The Bengals might be not cash flush enough to pay him, and that might be the issue more than the fact that they don't want to pay him. Now, that's more speculation than anything. The Bengals do have a history of being cheap, not paying players. You can remember back to his situation with Carson Palmer. Ended up getting traded from the Bengals because they wouldn't pay him. Quarterback then, he was their best option. He's the kind of guy that absolutely deserves that money, too. He's one of the best receivers in all of football, and I don't think anyone is disagreeing with that. The question is, will the Bengals pay him? And I think, again, we've talked about this a little bit. It's dumb for the Bengals not to pay him. It's only going to get more expensive as guys come up for contracts. His teammate, T. Higgins, is up next year. We just saw a whole bunch of players get paid over $30 million. He is going to need that. These are Ja'Marr Chase is in the midst of a hold-in, half-practice situation where he isn't practicing, or he hasn't been until yesterday. He showed up one day. Zach Taylor made a comment saying, hey, I think we're going to get Ja'Marr Chase back. From there, he's obviously a great player. The Bengals obviously want him back. That's been the gist of almost every single comment that's been made regarding Ja'Marr Chase from his teammates, from his quarterbacks, from the coaches, from everyone. Couple of days, he's been limited in practice. He practiced a little bit. He had his pads on in these last 2 days, which is positive news for the Bengals. He and Haason Reddick, Ja'Marr Chase and Haason Reddick, were the two guys that I was concerned were not going to play. We've obviously seen Ja'Marr Chase hold out or skip a whole season, obviously missing for that COVID year in his college season, holding out, but it is somewhere along the same lines where he is willing to miss out on a whole season. Ja'Marr Chase, obviously, honestly, if I'm Ja'Marr Chase, you wait one more year, that money might go up. You might be able to make 37, 38 million as opposed to 34. So I'm in no rush I'm in no rush if I'm Ja'Marr Chase to get this contract done. Although it would be nice to get that extra 30 something million dollars in my bank account right now. So I understand it from both sides. But we take a look at exactly where Jamar Chase stands right now. The Bengals are going to need Jamar Chase if they want to really make a run at it. And I've talked about this being the last year for a couple of teams, at least in their current window, at a real championship shot. I think the Bengals are one of those teams. Their defense is starting to fall apart. Trey Hendrickson has asked for a trade. Jamar Chase, we see where he's at. T. Higgins is going to be gone next season. They don't have enough money to pay him. The Cowboys also in a similar situation. They're going to have to let some pieces go soon. They don't have the money to pay everybody. This feels like a final hurrah for them as well, at least in this iteration of their championship window. That's not to say next year they can't be in a championship window, but it's not going to be the same team. They're going to be missing a couple of key pieces, right? And that's where we're at with the Bengals as well. This kind of feels like a last hurrah. They need everybody here, and Jamar Chase is a central piece of that. If he isn't, the Bengals are going to be in a good amount of trouble. But I do think everything that's coming out of camp with Jamar Chase, everything that he might miss week 1, that is still unclear and up in the air. I feel like he won't miss anything more than 1 week, though. So it's an interesting situation. It's not going to be a full holdout. I'm not sure if they're going to get him paid before the season starts, but things seem to be moving in at least in a good enough direction for and participate in team activities. Usually a good sign. I'm not sure if he started there too late to actually get into the game against the Patriots. We're going to have to wait for a little more reporting on that and wait over the weekend for a little bit more to come out. But let me know what your thoughts are on the Jamar Chase situation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think he'll miss week 1. I think he'll be back for week 2, contract or not. But we're going to take a quick step away. When we come back, we're going to venture into the world of baseball. Cannot wait to talk about it. It's been a while. Matt Chapman, third baseman for the San Francisco Giants, signs a massive extension. We'll talk about the details of that, what that means for Matt Chapman, and whether or not it was a good move for the San Francisco Giants. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Jamar Chase, Haason, Reddick holdouts, as well as predicting the first game of the NFL season, a kickoff game that is the rematch of the AFC Championship game yesterday, talking all about the Ravens taking on the Chiefs in Arrowhead in just under 3 hours from now. In this segment, we are going to move out of the world of football very briefly before ending our show back on it. Today, talking about a massive contract that was handed out at about midnight last night Eastern Standard Time between the Giants and their third baseman. Matt Chapman signs a massive contract. We'll talk about all of that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is Day. But like I was saying, we are going to get baseball. Talking a little bit about Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman, third baseman for the San Francisco Giants. He is a four-time in the offseason, one of those Scott Boras guys that we were clamoring, trying to see where he would go, coming over from Toronto to the San Francisco Giants. He's had a resurgent season offensively. He's always been one of those guys, especially early on in his career with the A's, where he finished top 10 in MVP voting, where the offense was good. His defense has always been elite. He's a four-time Gold Glove winner for a reason, right? He's a reigning Gold Glove winner for a reason, and he might even do it again this year, although it's a little bit of a tighter competition with guys like Nolan Arenado on third base in that hot corner as well. So we will see what happens there. But Matt Chapman's offensive numbers this season are back to when he was getting top 10 MVP finishes, top 6, top 7 MVP finishes. When you take a look at his offensive numbers, the power is resurgent, and he still has about 20 games left to go. He almost has a record for home runs hit. He's right on pace to maybe even break his personal record. But this is a guy that has earned himself a contract. He is one of the few Scott Boras guys that signed late in the offseason that has panned out. He signed originally a 3-year deal. This wipes out the next couple of years and just replaces them. So this one acts as a 3-year extension. It adds 6 years to where it is. It wipes out whatever the other ones would have been for the next couple of seasons. It's also more money for him. This is a huge get for the Giants, a team that kind of seem to have the philosophy of, hey, we don't rebuild, we reload. And they are in the midst of a brutal reload, I would say, where they're not bad, they're just kind of mid, which is not where you want to be in baseball. It's not where you want to be in any sport. It's a bit of a mess, and I don't envy. The Giants are a very 38 season. He's going to be 38 years old when this contract runs out, which is a little bit it's a little old for a baseball player. It's not where you want to be when you're looking at a guy that you want to kind of build around, which is where this contract kind of sits at. There's an interesting it's an interesting little middle ground because he is performing. He is someone that deserves this contract. But as far as actually, you know, Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking all about the Matt Chapman deal with the Giants, signing a 6-year deal. Not something that I think really fits with their timeline. Maybe I'm completely off about that. I'm not convinced that deal was really worth it, although good for Matt Chapman for getting his money. In this segment, we are going to go over one more contract, this time back in the world of football, as Pat Surtain II with the Denver Broncos has signed a 4-year mega contract, making him the highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL. We'll talk about where that puts the Broncos, whether or not it was a good decision, and much more. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon on a beautiful NFL kickoff Thursday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit of the Pat Surtain contract situation. Pat Surtain signs a 4-year contract with the Denver Broncos, making him the highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL. This comes after A.J. Terrell signs a massive contract with the Falcons earlier on this offseason, another position that has its money really starter for the Steelers. We don't know if he's going to start because he has been dealing with an injury. So maybe we do get Justin Fields after all in week 1, throwing even more wrenches in the plans of the Steelers there as they continue to deal with quarterback purgatory since the Broncos and Russell Wilson parted ways. But Pat Surtain is really that last guy that is worth anything. Now, that's not to say that everyone on the Broncos is awful. I like Courtland Sutton. I think Bo Nix has potential. Jamal Williams, I apologize, is a guy that I really do think could